So last week, I was able to get one of my clients' deportation cases terminated in immigration court, which was the best possible outcome we were hoping for, but there was no way to know for sure whether or not the immigration judge would agree to it. And also, we didn't know how Homeland Security Council would react to such a request. But the basis for us requesting that the case be terminated is because USCIS made a number of errors in my client's case. So she was placed into deportation proceedings because um, of a series of events that unfortunately immigration didn't correct. So she had a 2-year conditional green card based on marriage. When the time came to file the petition to remove conditions on the residence, she and her spouse filed the 751 petition with immigration. They provided evidence that they were still in a valid marriage. Um, but immigration basically mixed up their addresses. So my clients lived in 2 different states, and they always updated their addresses and notified immigration that they had 2 homes that they alternated, basically because of work. Sometimes it was more convenient to live in one home as opposed to the other. They provided all of this information to immigration, but unfortunately, USCIS never really updated the files to reflect where the clients were actually living at the time. So what immigration ended up doing was they would send really important mail to the clients, but to the wrong address. It was either to a previous address that they didn't live in anymore, or it was mailed to an address that was missing vital information. And these little mistakes, seemingly insignificant mistakes, can lead to really terrible outcomes, and the extreme example is that in my client's case, um, she was placed into proceedings. Not only was she placed into deportation proceedings, she didn't even know that because multiple government agencies were using the wrong address, including immigration court, which is separate from USCIS. So um, the other confusing thing that immigration did is that um, with regards to the 751 petition, at some point, immigration denied the 751 petition because it alleged that my clients failed to show up for an I-751 interview, even though their attorney at the time, wasn't me, had mailed a letter to immigration stating my clients are out of state. They're actually on vacation. They won't be able to make it in such short notice to this interview. Can you please reschedule the interview to another date when my clients will be back in town? So this request to reschedule was sent to immigration. However, immigration went ahead and denied the application anyways. By the time immigration got the request to reschedule, it was already too late. They had already denied the 751. Then USCIS reopened the 751, scheduled my clients for an interview. My client showed up. Their officer said everything looks fine. We are going to approve your 751. Immigration even went as far as producing the new 10-year old card, mailing it to the clients, but guess what? They mailed it to the wrong address. What happens when immigration mails a green card or a work permit that doesn't actually get delivered to the right person? For security reasons, these are secure government issued documents. The post office, as a policy matter, they'll always return these green cards or work permits and send them back to USCIS. And then what does USCIS do? They destroy the green card or the work permit. Well, this is what happened in my client's case, right? She got her 751 approved. Immigration even mailed her new green card, but it was destroyed because immigration sent it to the wrong address. So it was just, a disaster after a disaster. By the time the clients came to me for a consultation, they were at their wits' end. They didn't know what to do. The US citizen spouse was pretty outraged that so many mistakes could happen. Um, and what I did was I filed a Freedom of Information Act request, which is colloquially known as a FOIA request. It's a request to immigration to provide you with a copy of your file, what they have on you. So I filed FOIA requests both with USCIS and with the immigration court. Um, and after receiving both of the records from immigration court and USCIS, I was able to see the whole history of all of the mistakes that were made by the government agencies that led to my client being placed into deportation. So, I talked about my clients. What I was hoping would happen is by showing to immigration that this was not my client's fault that she was placed into deportation proceedings. She proved that her marriage to her spouse was still real, they're still living together, um, that the deportation proceedings should be terminated. Um, you know, I knew that the immigration judge that we had a good reputation for being fair. So we know that we had that going for us. What I did not know was who was the trial attorney representing DHS. And, under this current administration, we know that there is a focus on enforcement and deportation. Um, there was a real chance that the trial attorney would try to proceed with prosecuting all deportation cases, right? So that's kind of what I was expecting going into this hearing. Um, but much to my, surprise, when I explained to the immigration judge the history of the case, what happened, she immediately realized that this was a case that should not have been put in front of her. And I also saw that the trial attorney was pretty receptive to, the arguments that I was making. Um, so the judge asked Homeland Security, what is your position? What, do you agree that any of these things are true? And to their credit, the government lawyer did admit, he said, I reviewed the file, the online file that I have, and I'll admit it's a mess. To get the government to agree to that, it takes a lot, to concede that, they have made mistakes, and in these cases, the stakes are really high. Mistakes can lead to getting innocent people placed into deportation proceedings. So then the judge asked what we are seeking, and I said, well, Your Honor, I think we should have these proceedings terminated because my client is still married. She's not deportable. Her US citizen spouse is waiting outside and he's fully ready to testify to the validity of their marriage. The 751 should never have been, in fact, the 751 was denied, then reopened, then actually granted by USCIS. So why did the agency go ahead and place her into proceedings? Um, so the Homeland Security attorney basically told the judge, you know, we would not oppose a termination in this case, and we would not even appeal the court's decision terminating this with prejudice. And what that means is that um, they're not going to try to go after my client anymore, right? Like, so this termination order is full and final, and the government basically gave up its right to appeal or contest the judge's decision. So that was a great outcome, and it was something that I was not fully expecting to happen so quickly. I was expecting at the very least that DHS would put up some kind of an objection to say, well, we need to review the entire file just to make sure. But they actually were really amenable and, willing to negotiate and admit to errors that were made on their part. So that's kind of like some silver lining in the climate that we are in right now, where so much is happening that is, negative, that is um kind of really not good news for most immigrants. So I'm just kind of hoping that even though we are in a really difficult administration, there are still federal employees within the agencies that are kind of, living up to their civic duties, performing their jobs in a fair manner. And, we got to see that last week. Not all hope is lost. There are still judges that are holding the line, still doing um, what their jobs are, right? It's sad to say that not all immigration judges are doing that. A lot of them are kind of falling in step with the current administration and just taking their marching orders. But, I was pleasantly surprised to see that, opposing counsel was so willing to um, close out a deportation proceeding on the very first, hearing. Um, and I think too, if I had to also guess as to what were some of the other motives why the government would agree is it saves government resources. It's one less case that they have to fight about or to spend any more time or work on. It's pretty clear that this is not a case that should be continued in litigation and deportation proceedings. It doesn't really serve any purpose. So hopefully we'll be able to get more positive outcomes moving forward. Um, you know, I guess it also goes to show you that you never really know what's going to happen in court. A lot of it depends on the immigration judge that you have and also the government attorney that is handling the particular hearing that day. And in our case, both of those two parties were in our favor. So that's that case.